Good morning, everyone. Eddie G's Music World is back. It's usually on a Monday, but my Monday was just crazy. I just had to do things. I had to go buy a mattress that I didn't really need, but I didn't like the one I had. What the hell? I'm difficult. That's why I'm doing this. I'm just difficult. And then I had to do the dentist yesterday. It's just a lot of running around. Anyway, Eddie G's Music World, January 30th, 2019. Yes, we've made it this far. It's a little different this time. I don't know if the microphone can or cannot pick up any bit of music, but I figured I would love that YouTube would go and tell me I'm not allowed to play the music. Just to hear from them would make my day. It would be so exciting that they care enough to listen to my broadcast to tell me I'm not allowed to do something. So right now, I kind of logged up um, a bunch of 1970s songs just for the hell of it. I clicked on it. It lasts an hour and something minutes, which is more than my show, and it'll play in the background. So right now it's Dire Straits. So if I feel like talking about the song that's playing, I will. Like for Dire Straits, they're two brothers, Mark and David Knopfler. They don't like each other, which is not uncommon with brothers, especially in music. It seems like a popular, not popular, but a common situation. So I know that they were inducted in the Hall of Fame, and practically nobody from the band, but a couple of lesser known members of Dire Straits showed up to accept the being inducted. But this was massive, 1978, I think. I hope you can hear it. I mean, it's a good song. It's just throwing another dynamic to the show. Things that happened in music, not a lot that really caught my eye. I know we lost some sort of R&B type of crooning singer named James Ingram at 66 years old. He knew it was announced by Debbie Allen, who's a kind of a choreographer, dancer type of person. She mentioned it on Twitter or somewhere. And I always got him mixed up with Peabo Bryson. So now I won't be able to get him mixed up as much because I'll say, well, the one that passed away is James Ingram. Peabo Bryson's still alive. So I'll be able to figure out the differences between the two. So he had Baby Come to Me, a duet with Patty Austin, and he had Just Once and probably another 3 or 4 songs I can't think of and don't really think is important to rattle off all the songs that he did. Not a lot of hits, maybe 4 or 5, like I said. But a great voice, a lot of like dramatic, couples music, lovey-dovey stuff, and trying to think if there's anything else. I know Maroon 5 is in the Super Bowl in about 4 days. I mean, I'll watch it, but I'm not exactly a super fan of Maroon 5. I'd say they're good, but I'm not quite sure if it means that they're an amazing band to see live, but I'll give them a look. It's only 10 or 12 minutes. And something I wanted to find, and I'm going to go looking for it now while I'm doing the show. It's something I was looking into, but with these kind of things. Oh, another thing I could talk about while I'm looking for this is Mark Ronson was on Howard Stern yesterday, and I didn't realize this. He's a producer for many artists like Amy Winehouse, Bruno Mars, etc., etc. A few other ones, and he's producing a song for Howard Stern that was written by Fred Norris, who works for Howard, and he was interviewed, and his stepfather is actually Mick Jones from Foreigner, not the Mick Jones from The Clash. And he met all kinds of people growing up, friends with Sean Lennon, and had a lot of stories about being saved from drowning by Paul McCartney, and seeing Bruce Springsteen in the middle of the night taking a beer out of his fridge. Because, of course, when your stepfather is a rock star, you're going to have all these people show up in your condo or house or whatever. Okay, I'm trying to see, where did I stop last? Okay, I'm trying to find something that I was working on last week, and I will find it, even if I repeat something. But I know that I had, let me check one thing so I can be sure. I had last discussed and the greatest albums. And now I'm looking for the list. Oh, this is Neil Young being played right now. And it's The Heart of Gold. Yes, I do remember that song. Number one hit. One of the few Canadians that had a number one hit in the US. And I did see him live and enjoyed the show very much. Okay, I did find the list that I was looking for to give you a little bit of a background. I'm continuing my countdown of the greatest albums of all time. Number 229 is Aerosmith's Toys in the Attic. Have seen them live a couple of times. Stories are running around that they might be back on tour to well, if you believe Steve Tyler, it's to kind of be like an end of the road thing. But if you believe Joe Perry, he says it's not really sure that they're ending and so fast and whatever. But this was one of their big albums from back then, Sweet Emotion, Walk This Way. I may have done this one last week, but it's not a really big problem if you hear me review it twice. Eric B. and Rakim, Paid in Full is that album. And I remember they had a couple of songs that I liked back in the day when they came out. What was that song that I really liked by them? Heart and Pain, or Pain and Soul, or whatever it was. But they had a following, and couldn't tell you what they're up to now. But obviously, it's kind of like a group a duo that came out with some hip hop type of stuff, and it was big for that period. Pixies are coming to my town. I think they're doing a show with Weezer, and they had a following, and they still do. Never had that massive song, but they've always been like influential to bands like Nirvana. They said they've always been a popular band with that kind of grungy style. Amazingly, after 30, almost whatever, 40 years almost, maybe, that they're still, or is that 30 years about, and they're still like around touring. They still have a good crowd that goes to see them, but they never had that massive song. They had a couple of songs that I've heard, but not something that I think of often when I think about what songs I really like. Speaking of Bruce Springsteen, it was, like I said, I had mentioned he was in Mark Ronson's kitchen drinking a beer when he was a kid. His album is Nebraska. That is at number 226 on the most popular albums of all time. This was kind of a folky type of album where he kind of had a guitar and, strummed along. And no matter what he does, whether it's laid back, low key type of pop, or it's more aggressive, harder rock, the guy never skips a beat. He's always popular. He always tours. I mean, doesn't look like he's slowing down. He might have just finished a few shows in New York, like he keeps going to the same place in New York all the time. In the background, you're hearing the Bee Gees. I'll talk about them too. Why not? How Deep Is Your Love? That was off the soundtrack of Saturday Night Fever, I'm pretty sure. That was a soundtrack that, if you were on it, you made millions of dollars, especially the Bee Gees, because they wrote probably 6 songs on that album. Yvonne Elliman, one of her hits was a song written by them. They had 2 or 3 songs on there, and I know there was another couple. Now, personally, the movie itself was nothing to get excited about. To see John Travolta dancing, I didn't get a big thrill out of it, so I probably saw like half an hour of it clicking through the channels once or twice, and I never really was that drawn to it. But these guys were massively popular. If you're young and you're 30 or 40, You don't realize in 1978 they were the 70s, like mid to late 70s. They were on a tear like the Beatles. I mean, people say the Beatles were the hottest thing. Of course they were. But these guys were knocking hits off left and right for other people, for themselves. It was just madness. Every time you turn on the radio, it's either a song they wrote or produced or it was them. So, of course, that's way back in the days when there were three of them and now there's one, and his output is at zero pretty much. He may tour one day, and that would be kind of tempting. You'd get one VG at least. Okay, we're switching around a lot. Listen, it's Eddie G's Music World. I make the rules. I'd love to have someone else tell me what they want to do on the show. I'd be happy to listen to it, but I figured I'd try something different. Have some music, talk about the music, talk about the most popular albums. Let's go to the next album, Green Day, American Idiot. From what I remember, this was all about George Bush, the son, because they hated that guy big time. They managed to take this show on Broadway. I mean, believe it or not, they took the whole story of how they hated him and all the Bush-related politics and did a Broadway tours. I mean, they did it Broadway. They were on Broadway for sure, because I remember being in New York City like 8-9 years ago, and there were like big signs everywhere. And they may have toured too. So these guys went to a bunch of broke punk guys, to a Broadway writers, and of course, big stars too. And they still come around. They seem to be nice. They take kids that are in the audience and pull them on stage to let them talk, which is a nice gesture. They seem like they're reasonable guys. Billy Joe Armstrong has had a few meltdowns over the years where he starts whipping his guitar down. And then he goes back and says, well, because I was into booze, and he blames it on the alcohol or whatever. I have nothing against the guy. They're a good band. Next. Neil Diamond, the Neil Diamond Collection, a bunch of greatest hit songs. And Neil Diamond has had a bout with Parkinson's disease, and he's kind of hung up the touring. So I did get to see him just before he ended, about 2012. He's closing in on 80. I mean, at this some point, you have to kind of pull the plug on touring when you're close to 80. You have Parkinson's, and listen, I hear the song in the background. I'm not going to talk about the song. It's Stairway to Heaven. I don't have nothing to say about it. I've heard it 10 million times. I'll wait till it ends. I'll talk about the next song. But yes, prolific songwriter, great vocalist, had to be talked into singing by someone else. I think it was Jay Black from Jay and the Americans, and I'm glad I saw him live. I mean, he's glitzy, schlocky kind of guy, like old school Vegas type of singer, but had a big band with him. Played a lot of his hits, so I didn't know I wasn't sure I'd like it, the show, but I'm glad I went. Number 223, another overplayed. Listen, I mean, I'm drowning in overplayed songs. I got Led Zeppelin Stairway to Heaven playing on another computer, and I got U2's War on my computer. New Year's Day. I mean, how many times have I heard that? Sunday Bloody Sunday. If I had $20 for every time I heard both those songs, I'd be living in a mansion. But I'm just going to move on, because U2's been overtalked and overplayed. I just don't know what else to say about U2 or Led Zeppelin, so I'll let them both. I'll move on to the next. Eddie G's Music World, talking about the Rolling Stones' top 500 albums of all time. Number 222, here, I'm going from U2 to Professor Longhair, New Orleans Piano. So I'm going from a band that I know too much about to a guy that I don't know anything about. Except maybe that he's a piano player, like a lot of these guys, New Orleans style. I mean, I could imagine probably a Dr. John type of guy. And that's it. Maybe I'll have to look up Professor Longhair. Maybe by now his hair's shorter or he's dead. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, number 221. Okay, look, they were kind of a band that got a lot of buzz in the 90s, part of this like alternative scene. And I have heard them, but it just happens to be a band that if you don't look them up or buy their records, you will not hear them in this town. Unless you're listening to a college radio station like McGill or Concordia, you're not going to hear My Bloody Valentine on the radio. But then again, who listens to the radio anymore? I used to yearn to be on the radio, but now they're just basically spinning records and barely have much to say. Like CJD is just a monopoly. Bell is a monopoly that controls 50, 60% of the radio stations, maybe 75. And then you got Chorus, another big, massive company that controls the other bunch of radio stations. So if those two people aren't interested in you, you have to wait for some miracle radio station that's supposed to open up maybe for the last 7 years that hasn't really opened yet. And I'm pretty sure they're not interested in me anymore since I got mad at a guy that told me he'd get back to me for like 6 years in a row. And I said, I didn't hear from you. He says, well, you think I'm ignoring? And he didn't appreciate the comment. I tend to get people pissed off at me easily. Number 220, the Meters. I have heard of these guys. Look, Capai Pie. Another New Orleans band. I mean, this Rolling Stone, they must be into this kind of like New Orleans style, because in the last 3 or 4 albums on this list, it's 2 guys that are not mainstream massive bands. But again, not all of this stuff is all mainstream superstar type of people. It could be just that a lot of guys that are under the radar are really talented. Like their instrumentals on here. That's what I found out. People have sampled stuff, Nas and the NWA off of it. So I'm sure I've heard a Meters song a little bit here and there. Number 219, the Beastie Boys, License to Ill. Big album when it came out in 1986. I remember buying the cassette, I think. And no one, at least I never heard anybody like that. I was 26. And they were like off the wall kind of guys with their hip hop beats and metal riffs and sampling and rhythms. Look, that was their strength. They couldn't sing. I'm sorry, but they just had voices of like a bunch of teenagers in a bar screaming. But they sounded great. They knew how to sample. They knew how to make great beats, and they just yelled. But the yelling worked with the music. So Beastie Boys had a massive career. One of them has died, I believe, Adam Yauch, and some other guy that was there at the very beginning but left died recently too. But he was not part of the big band. He might have left just before they became. They had the album out. I don't remember his name even. But the other 2 guys that are alive from the Beastie Boys, I don't know. I doubt if they're really. I'd be curious to see what they're up to. There's certainly no more Beastie Boys because Yauch was a big deal, and unlike bands like The Who, they don't just throw another guy and then keep going. They decided to let the band go, and if they're talented enough, some of them, the other 2 guys, I'm sure they're doing something. I doubt if they're retired. I mean, they would be about close to 50. I'd be shocked if they retired. There's another band that's not together anymore. Number 218, The Smiths. The Queen is Dead. Here, you listen to the greatest part of the Zep. Here comes Robert Plant screaming his brains out. Listen. Oh no, it's still Jimmy wailing on the guitar. But the road part's coming up. I'll let you listen. I'm letting the boys play. Just one line or 2, and then I'll get back to my show. Here we go. I hope you can hear it on the show. It doesn't matter anyway. You've heard the song 5 million times. The Smiths, The Queen is Dead, is the next album. And yes, Morrissey, well known for his antics, or not antics, but vegetarian ways and all his protests and everything. And there's songs on here at I don't think this is the album with How Soon Is Now. That one is Meat is Murder. And this one probably has a song or 2 that I do know, but I haven't looked up every song on the album. But they did have a good run for a bit, and of course, never really were a top 40 act. They had their style, which I liked, and kind of had a fast burnout. I'm pretty sure those guys didn't really get along. This is the case for most of these bands that end up breaking up, and I don't expect to hear these two guys back together. And I don't even expect to hear the band playing in the background, Led Zeppelin, to be back together. Hey, maybe I'll turn the sound up. Maybe the next song is really good because I. Hey, now it's time to get emotional. For those of you that are involved in a breakup or can't find love, Air Supply is about to sing. I'm all out of love. It was a great song. I saw them live. They were really, their voices filled up the room and magically. They're very talented guys. You would think I wouldn't like a band like that because I like a little harder rock, but I like this song. I certainly hope Air Supply is not drowning me out. Bobby Bland, Two Steps from the Blues. Okay, Bobby Bland, there was a song that I know from him. He had a hit record that crossed into the top 100, top 40 for sure. But Let the Little Girl Dance is my memory of it, that was his song, but I don't have it in front of me and I'm not about to start checking up. So he did have a bit of popularity in the mainstream, but more of a bluesy guy, and got pretty high in their charts. So they must have really appreciated it, appreciated his music. And I'll have to go look around and listen to what kind of music he did and get a bit more familiar. I doubt if I'll do that, actually. By the way, this song went to number 2. The song in the background, I'm All Out of Love. And it holds the world record for hit song, like top 5 song, that hold, or top 40 even. The longest held note of all time for any hit, big hit. He holds the note at the end of the song, like, I don't remember how many seconds, but easily 25 to 30 seconds. He says the word long or something like that, and he holds the note. I may let that play when it starts to come up on the part of the song. And no, he didn't. The singer did not do it live. The Air Supply, he couldn't hold that note for 27 seconds or whatever. But he did do it in the studio, so hats off to him. Here, number 216. I'm switching around a lot, but it's fun. Bo Diddley's album, Bo Diddley, Go Bo Diddley. Let's see. I'm a Man was on this. Who Do You Love? Big influence on George Thorogood, who I did meet, barely. And Diddley had that square guitar, but it's not the kind of a guitar that he's holding on the album cover. But he had a square guitar, and he was really innovative in his music and his guitar. And he was one of these guys that beloved by many, but never really cashed in. I heard that never really was. He had to tour into his older age, and I don't know. Not sure if he never made much money, but I'm pretty sure. Another band who didn't really have a massive career, number 215, New York Dolls. New York Dolls. And I like them. I remember looking them up. I looked them up, and it's produced by Todd Rundgren, who I did meet, and Personality Crisis was on this. Here's the note being held. Listen, people. That's it. He held the note that long. Unbelievable. I don't know how this guy's should be in some kind of Hall of Fame just for holding that note. Okay, New York Dolls, back to them. Now, that guy sounds like Barry White playing. That's a great song. So these guys were like before Kiss was putting on makeup, these guys were dressing up like women. It didn't quite take off the same way because I don't think they had the catchy pop song ability that Kiss did, even though Kiss was a little hard. they didn't catch on. They were always barely making the charts, like an MC5 history. They had the talent. They had a good gimmick, stage show, and all this, but they just never made it to the big time. But Buster Poindexter, feeling hot, 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 was the alter ego. It was the same. David Johansen was the singer of the New York Dolls, and he had a bit of a hit with Feeling Hot, Hot, Hot because it was the same guy, but he changed his name to Buster Poindexter. And he was that song was in a movie or two, and he's done a bit of acting. And I think he does a show on some Sirius satellite radio channel, David Johansen. So the guy's probably 70, and the other guy's, I remember reading up on one of the other guys in the band, and they kind of like, they eked out lives. They eked out livelihoods. They never, they didn't end up in the neighborhood of Mick Jagger or anything like that. But they had apartments, and they basically scratched out a life. And maybe some of them had to do other jobs. Look, Lou Reed had to go back to his father after he recorded an album or two and sit in some printing company and, to knock out a couple $100 a month. Okay, we are trudging along in Eddie G's music world, accompanied by music, which is an attempt of mine. Ike and Tina Turner, Proud Mary, the best of Ike and Tina Turner at number 214. This had the song River Deep Mountain High, which I know from reading Phil Spector's book, the book about him. Phil Spector, he produced that song, and it had the Wall of Sound style. And of course, we all know Tina Turner, of course, emerged out of there and massively successful. And Ike, although great guitarist and maybe other talents, kind of got a little buried in bad publicity since Tina wrote a book, I, Tina, and of course the movie about their life painted him as a wife beater, and Lawrence Fishburne played him. So look, I don't know. It's pretty sad if he really was beating his wife. It's not good, but the only good thing he did for her was she was Annie Mae Bullock in 1960 and was at one of his concerts. He had already been around for 12 years in the 40s. And Ike plucked her from the audience and said, come up here and sing. And if he didn't do that, we'll never know if Tina Turner would have been the big success she became. Now, I know she's living in Switzerland. She's pretty old. I mean, if she was born around 1940, that puts her close to 80. I mean, I never saw her live, and I regret that. But at this point, she's not running around with a gas card and $18 like she was when she left Ike, trying to pick up enough money to feed her kids. She's done well. I believe one of her kids passed away lately. I remember seeing that. But, pretty impressive career that she's had. But I don't blame her for hanging it up. Maybe the Rolling Stones should look at 2020, 2022 as a time to, when you see the number 8 in your future, followed by a 0, I think it's time. The Rolling Stones, God bless them, they have the talent to keep playing forever probably, but you got to start wondering when it's going to start to fall apart. You can't be 85 years old and go tour. There's something wrong with that. I saw the Chuck Berry on a video well into his late 80s, and it was downright pathetic. The man couldn't sing. His guitar abilities were down to barely over 0. He was barely shuffling. I know the guy must have loved money, and he did it, and it's his right to have played till almost his death. But at some point, you got to start saying, my audience deserves better than an 88-year-old man shuffling around the stage for a few hundred or a few grand. Sometimes you got to say, let my fans remember me for my vibrant times. In the background, you're hearing Gloria Gaynor, I Will Survive, and she's still around, so she survived. Number 213, I was talking about the Rolling Stones, and guess what? They're the next album on the list, Tattoo You. 1981. What was the big song off there? Start Me Up. And yeah, that was amazingly sold to Microsoft, because Microsoft was becoming really big in computers, and they were getting notoriety, and they wanted a song to connect to their target audience, to connect Start Me Up, meaning start up the computer. So apparently the story I heard was something like whoever worked for Microsoft, it was either Bill Gates or someone else, said, listen, just write down on a paper how much you want to sell us Start Me Up for the commercial. And I think they wrote $8 million and on a paper and gave it back to them, and they said, okay. I mean, listen, at the time the Rolling Stones were coming out with hits. Now that's nobody's buying 75-year-old rock stars' new albums. They can come out with a new album every night or every year, and it's not going to sell, because nothing sells anymore except if you're like 20 years old or something. Oh, I hear hot stuff in the background. Love Donna Summer. Passed away sadly in the last few years. Very, very sad. Very disrespectful that when she passed away, almost nothing was said in the media. She died, and it was like a one-day thing, half a day. They talked about it, moved on to another story. It's like, it's funny. David Bowie died. The whole world cried for like 3 weeks. But Donna Summer died, I think it was 3-4 hours, and they got over it really quick. She had a better voice than Madonna ever will. And I'm not a disco fan per se, but she made it work, and she had the voice, and she had brilliant, like I Feel Love, like brilliant producers, Pete Bellotta, Giorgio Moroder, plus others, and massive hits too. But for whatever reason, I remember when she died, and almost nobody cared. It was a little story, and you could tell, like if Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr dies, you're going to be dealing with 10 days of crying. I'm not saying she's as big or important as Paul McCartney or Ringo Starr, but the point is, Donna Summer did pass away and should have gotten a few days of mourning in the media. Number 212, a band called Pavement. Crooked Rain, Crooked Rain. Wow, they must be really big to get this high. Pop songs, but wow, I don't know anything about them except that I see that they obviously, I heard the name, but that is as far as it goes. Number 211 is Pink Floyd's, and their album Wish You Were Here. This was basically 10 years into the Pink Floyd band being together, maybe 8 or 9 years, close to 10. And Shine On You Crazy Diamond is on this, a tribute to Syd Barrett, written about him, a whole side of an album. It was weird how all of that went down, with Barrett still being in the band when Gilmour showed up. It was extremely tense. This is what I read and heard. And it was a matter of time till Syd was bounced out. And he apparently showed up in the studio a few years later and just hung out, and they didn't know what to do with him. I think he expected to be on another album, but he was just not part of the band anymore, and they kind of didn't want to kick him out of the room. But that's what happens in music. He was talented, and Syd Barrett, and he just couldn't keep up with the band. His playing suffered due to mental illness, and he passed away about 8-9 years ago. Number 210. We played Neil Young earlier. Well, the computer did. Neil Young with Crazy Horse, and everybody knows This Is Nowhere. Neil Young at number 210. This sounds like it was a jam type of album, and I do know his music well, but I can't. It was 1969. This might have been the very early on in his solo career. That's around the time that he left CSNY and let them be CSN without him. Another overplayed song, but I hear it in the background. It's Hotel California. Not going to talk about it, but it is great. Number 209 is Pearl Jam with their album 10 from 1991. And I don't know what's wrong with me, but they have a song called Jeremy, which is a freaky song about a kid that burns buildings down. And I guess my strange side picked that name for my son, one of my sons. And just because I wanted to be a little freaky. So I said, I'll call him Jeremy. But I don't want my son to burn down buildings and schools. I really don't. But I've told my kid that, and he's been pretty mad. He's given me a bit of a hassle 2 or 3 times about it that I named him, and I didn't name him after Jeremy from the Pearl Jam band. I didn't name him after him, but it was a tiny little piece stuck in the back of my mind that it would be kind of interesting to throw that name in there and maybe kind of have it be a tiny bit connected to the song. Cat Stevens, or should I say Yusef Islam? Is that his name? He's obviously had that great, massive career in the 70s and had a really big change in his life when he was I think he was rescued in the water. He was swimming and someone saved his life. So he changed his name to Yusef Islam. Well, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me that much at all. But he stayed out of the touring game for many, many, many years. And now, a couple of years ago, he started touring, which is odd because he just kind of pulled himself away from all his history of being that big star with Wild World and Hard Headed Woman and all that from this album. And, he went back to it now. You could say maybe it was for the money, or maybe he just figured, why not embrace my past? And he went back to it and started playing those songs again. So I've always liked his music. I don't care what religion he is. He's a talented guy. Number 207 is Santana with their album Abraxas, 1970. I'm wondering if this was when the guy from Journey was in the band, or maybe he had just left. Because, of course, the guitarist of Journey, you'd think I'd know his name, right? Because I've only listened to Journey 5,000 times. But he was in Santana for Woodstock. It'll come to me. I know the guy's name. Not obviously the singer, was the guitarist, but anyway. He was in Santana and left with another guy, the keyboardist, and they formed Journey. And of course, that had a little bit of a 5-year span Journey where they were not massively huge, and then they, of course, became huge. But Santana's always carried on. I don't know how this guy's still around. This big song off of the album was Black Magic Woman, and that was written by Peter Green from Fleetwood Mac. And it's funny, Santana's one of the few bands that the guitarist is the star, who writes songs, but none of the big hits were written by Carlos Santana. And if he has sung, I don't know about it, so I won't say he's never sung on one of the Santana albums, but he's known to hire people, kind of like an Alan Parsons type of guy. He hires people to sing. But when he goes on tour, he's like Alan Parsons. He's not going to bring 7 guys to sing, because there's been like 7 different guys probably that sang hit records, like the guy from forget about it, whoever that guy was. See, I guess my old age is creeping in. I'm looking at too many Grixter cartoon videos, and my mind is melting from it. So this band, Santana, I mean, the guy's close to 70, still tours. Never went to see him live because of the fact that, okay, I'll see the brilliant guitar, but all the singers there's not going to be one singer from any of the songs that I know. But maybe I should, I mean, he's a legend guy. He's probably worth seeing live, but maybe one day. Here's a guy I've never seen live, and it's too late now. Prince with his album Dirty Mind at number 206 on the Rolling Stone Top 500 album countdown from Eddie G's Music World, with the Eagles playing in the background, tempting the lawyers from YouTube to give me a lawsuit or kick my video off. I'd be really happy to hear that. This was a good song. I remember there was one song that stood out. I think he might have had a song called "Dirty Mind." I liked it. It was a follow up to his "I Want to Be Your Lover" era. It was right after that, which was 78, 79. So this was pretty close after that, if not for sure the follow up, close to it. And we all know all about him, and he's overly loved and adored and all that, and had his bout with all his problems, and he's no longer alive, and you all know that if you're listening this long. Cream, a super band at number 205 with Clapton. I popped the letter. I got the microphone to free. Clapton, Jack Bruce, and Eric Clapton, Jack Bruce, and I'm starting to forget stuff. But anyway, this was a band that had all of these, hard rock songs. White Room, Crossroads. Not a band that stuck around long, because Clapton was moving around from band to band. He was in the Yardbirds. He did Cream. He did Blind Faith, I think. Traffic. So was he? Yeah, he was in Traffic. And of course, big solo records. So he didn't stick around long in the bands. Speaking of bands, I'm listening to ABBA in the background. I heard that they're getting back together and touring again. I'm not sure I'd go to see it, but good for them. Maybe they put their differences aside. Certainly didn't run out of money. Number 204, Bob Dylan. I spoke to my friend Danny Ettinger, and he told me he's seen Bob Dylan in the last year or two, and he couldn't believe it. That he said he sounded better than he sounded 35 years ago, singing and playing, which is bizarre because when I saw him in 1982, or no, about 84, 85, he was croaking out the vocals. The guitars were kind of draggy. I didn't enjoy it, but that was in a pretty blah. I don't know. He's just whatever reason didn't impress me. But now this guy's telling me he saw him recently, and he thought he was really good. So listen, you be the judge. Go see him live if you want to shell out $200 to hear him. I certainly won't go back because I don't go to shows that often anymore. We're at number 204. I wonder if we'll hear any Kiss albums on this list, because I'm going to see them in about 6 weeks. I'm going to guess no, because these snobbish people at Rolling Stone, they're not the type to put Kiss on this list. But Hall & Oates would, because they have a song called Kisses on my list. Michael Jackson, bad. Well, if they don't put Kiss, but they put Michael Jackson on it, he's pretty poppy. Anyway, this is the Bad album at number 203. Massive hits everywhere, left, right, and center. You couldn't turn on the radio without hearing his songs in a major way. And still, the rumors circulate that he was grabbing kids and teenage boys. There's a new documentary out about the guy. Don't ask me. I used to think it's impossible he did anything like that, but then I wonder now. But I'm on the fence with the guy. Surely a great talent. Whether or not he did that, I don't know. I can't go turn on the guy because he may have done something that I don't know if he did or not. Here's the great duo Simon and Garfunkel at number 202. Parsley, Sage, Rosemary, and Thyme. I'm almost tempted to sing it, but I'll spare you because you've been through enough. If you listen this much, you've been through enough. 59th Street Bridge song was on this album. The Dangly Conversation for Emily, 1966. When this came out, I was 6. The That's a long time ago because I'm going to be 59 in about 4 days. Time's flying very fast, people. If you got dreams to fulfill, go ahead and do them now before it's too late. Well, let's hear what the next song is. I can't wait. Seems to be massive hits on here. Another ABBA song? What's with these people? Okay, the 70s were great. This is Mamma Mia. And that was, they did a play with Mamma Mia and a movie. I saw the play in a big theater, Place des Arts. And I'm not going to say I was blown away by it, but it was decent. And I saw the movie, which was maybe a little bit better. And hey, you write a pop song or 10 or 20 of them and make gazillions of dollars. It sounds pretty bubblegummy, but not too many people can pull off what Abbott did, that's for sure. I mean, to pretty much pack in their career, I would say within 15 years and pile up more money than bands make in 50 years. It's pretty impressive. 9 Inch Nails, number 201, The Downward Spiral. Well, I have liked this kind of style of music. They have this like heavy beats that come out, metallic type of songs and all that. But more importantly, this ties in with a guy that I've listened to a lot lately, Gary Numan. And Gary Numan, of course, did this kind of music before 9 Inch Nails because Gary Numan started in the late 70s. 9 Inch Nails didn't come around until the early 90s. And 9 Inch Nails did a show where Gary Numan was called up to play with them. So they obviously love the guy. And you should definitely go look into some of his songs. Not only him, the guy's got a daughter who can sing well too. And she's in one of his videos. And I said she was cute on YouTube. And in the video, she was 11. And I got somebody replied to me that I was out of line to say she was cute. Well, I wasn't saying it in a way that going after the girl. I could see she was pretty young, but she is cute. And listen, maybe I'll say it again when she's 18 so nobody will say I'm out of line. She's now 13. But she can sing because if you go to Gary Numan live, he has her playing with him on a tour, a live show. And she can hit high notes. I mean, when you're 13, maybe your voice with women changes later on. I guess it must. And she's got a good voice, so I'm going to guess at some point her name is Persia Newman. And look for her. She might make it. She might. I don't know why. I just get a feeling she's going to have her own solo music and do well. I mean, I wish I had the capacity to get through and fly her from England into my area and put her on tour and make millions with her. Because somebody probably will. Because Gary's not going to say no to his daughter making it if somebody wants to do that. Maybe he'll accompany her on the tour. Well, I would see him if he came back. I've seen him twice. If he came back to Montreal and did a show and he brought his daughter, I definitely want to hear that. He's great live and super, super talented. This is a guy that influenced 9 Inch Nails, who were big. So imagine, you should definitely be listening to more of 9 Inch Nails and Gary Numan because their music is above a lot of stuff. Elton's first song, that was a real big hit. I mean, he had 2 or 3 before that, but this one was the first hit that was really caught on, Your Song. It's funny, Elton knew he was gay in 1970 when this came out about, but he didn't want to tell anyone because he knew that he needed to pile up the money before he let that secret out, because back in 1970, being gay was not as accepted. And he got married to a woman, so maybe he was bi or maybe he was gay the whole time and he just did it for whatever reason. I mean, I'm not going to speculate on why he married this woman, whatever her name was. Was it? I'm saying it's Bettina Hubers because I seem to remember that name. Bettina Hubers was either the one that Elton married or the woman that claimed Paul McCartney knocked her up in Hamburg, Germany and made a kid with her. I don't know. I get Bettina Hubers mixed up with with either Elton John's ex-wife or the girl that claimed Paul McCartney knocked her up. Doesn't matter. Next is number 200, AC/DC, Highway to Hell. It's funny. I was thinking to myself, what great massive bands have not played the Super Bowl? And these guys came to mind. And I thought of it and then didn't think about it for long. But then 5 or 6 days later, Gary Dell'Abate, who works for the Howard Stern show, he started talking about the top 10 bands that never played the Super Bowl, and AC/DC was on the list. It's just a coincidence. I'm sure he couldn't read my mind, so he didn't think about me, but he just happened to bring it up. And I feel that they would be a great fit. The rumors are Brian Johnson has drifted back. There's been a picture or something that they've rehearsed in some studio in Vancouver, BC. So he might be drifting back. I even saw something about the drummer that was Phil Rudd, who was their main drummer over the years, who got in illegal trouble threatening to kill someone. He was kicked out, that he might be drifting back. So if they get those two guys back, you really have a great, powerful... I know the bass player is not coming back, but he said, the bass player, I think is Young, somebody, not Young, I forget his name, Kurt something. He said if Brian Johnson came back to the band, he could potentially consider going back to AC/DC because he's in his mid-60s, but he's not that old. So that would be great if you got that white-haired guy. I forget his name. Long white hair. So that would be amazing. I wish the NFL would. I mean, AC/DC is not the scary band they were in 1977 and 8 and 9 when they were like this freaky, scary metal. Everybody knows all those songs. They're mainstream now. They're, Shook Me All Night Long and all this sexual references. It's not controversial. It was controversial in 1980. We're talking 2019. Nobody's offended by sexual talk anymore in a song, and nobody's going to think it's too loud. People, bubblegum singers love AC/DC. People who sing ballads love AC/DC. Throw them on the Super Bowl, for Christ's sake. These guys will do it. Call up Angus or send him an email. What the hell? I know it would be a perfect fit to have those guys on. They've never done it. I'd be shocked if they refused it. And maybe I'm prophetic into the 2020 Super Bowl will have AC/DC. Wow. I'd be impressed. Another Bee Gees song. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about it. The Strokes are the next album on the list, 199. We're getting close to the top. I don't even know what it is. Is this it? I know who the Strokes are. I know there's a couple of guys. I think Albert Hammond's son is in this band. And Albert Hammond, I threw him a compliment on Twitter, and he actually followed me after that. I think he's still following me. I'm not sure. He had hits like It Never Rains in Southern California, and he's written about 3 or 4 big hits for other people too. So I'm always impressed when big rock stars follow me. There's only a few. Eddie Money does. Albert Hammond. There's 3 or 4 other ones that are pretty successful that follow me. I'll take it. This album, they had a couple of songs I didn't know. Julian Casablancas, I think he's the main singer with this band. Good to listen to, kind of nice pop guitar type of stuff. They kind of were like a band that, if you look at their popularity, they got to the edge of like a Maroon 5 big time, but they didn't cross that line. Not saying they need to or that there's something bad about not becoming massive, because for sure there isn't. It doesn't matter. They did have a few good songs. They're probably still recording, coming out with records, and at this point, they're not going to make much with them anymore. But maybe if they tour, they should be worth it. Little Walter at number 198, The Best Of. One of these blues guys, standard Muddy Water types of guys, harmonica player, sax, and Chicago blues scene. And, you're not going to, there's not a lot to say about a guy that I've never really done much, except that he did die young at 37. He died in a fight. Poor guy. Probably never got to cash in. But That's music, especially the blues. Not too many people made big money out of that scene. But these next guys did make a really great career. REM with that album Murmur at number 197. Kind of the beginnings of alt rock. It's just a label. But definitely Peter Buck was in this band, Michael Stipe, and had a great career. And just kind of like by early 2000s, they saw the plug. They saw the money in the bank, and they pulled the plug. Don't know what the guys are up to now. They did have a roster change. One guy left and was replaced, but they were around at the right time. Just think about music. If these guys came out in 2018, and they would probably be lost in the shuffle. But because they came out in the early 80s, people went and ran to the record store and bought their albums. Couldn't steal the music. So it's all timing. They were a huge band, but would they have made the money they made? Had they come out in the download and their song stealing era? Maybe by touring they might have, but they never would have sold the millions that they sold. Oh, this is an album I actually had. Number 196. Various artists, nuggets, original artifacts from the first psychedelic era, 1965 to 1968. I read a review about it, and I bought it. And it was so great, full of all these obscure 60s garage rock. Lenny Kaye put the whole album together, this double album. And I loved it so much, I went to CHOM, which is a massive radio station in my city of Montreal. And I said, listen, you guys, this is before people could just grab songs off of, the computer. This is 1980s, early 80s. And I said, I want to hear some great music. So I stupidly gave away the album. But I gave it to them, and they actually played the odd song from it. I heard them play kind of songs that were off on the album. I'm assuming it's from my copy, but I'll never be sure. How do I know if the program director didn't get his own copy and throw mine in the garbage? But I'm guessing back then they were very laid back. I'm guessing they actually played it off my album that I donated to them. And for sure, I was always happy to hear them play the songs off the album I gave them. But worth checking out. Very obscure music on there, like Mushroom. What was that band? Third Floor Elevators type of stuff. Obscure music. And no, I'm not going to talk about the song in the background because I've talked with the Bee Gees enough today. Number 195, we're going to have this to be the last entry on the Eddie G show, Eddie G's Music World for the week of January 30th, 2019. This is John Mayall with Eric Clapton and the Blues Breakers. A lot of guys passed through this album, this band. Remember when I said Eric Clapton was in a bunch of bands and I thought I named them all? Well, I forgot that he was in John Mayall with the Blues Breakers. I guess Clapton left Yardbirds and jumped into this band. And like I said, he was one of these guys. He didn't need to stay in a band for long because he was so revered and people bowed down and worshiped the guy. Obviously, I'm not going to put him down and say I didn't like his guitar playing or his singing. I liked it, but I never really freaked out over the guy. But he's like considered godlike. So this is an album that was on there. What I Say is on this, Ray Charles song, and a very bluesy style. I think John Mayall may be alive. Gonna have to look into that. So thank you very much for another week. I talked to the Grigster on the computer. There was talk about a potential Super Bowl Eddie G's birthday show, which is February 3rd. But it's going to be tough to pull off because my kids will be in the house and they're super loud. They don't put up with my kind of, requests to be quiet. They don't like to be quiet. If you think I have a loud mouth, these kids are way louder than me. Eddie G's Music World signing off for another week. Take care, everybody. Love you.